Good morning.
Good
I'm so glad to see everyone this morning. I'm Michelle, and we're going to start off today by honoring our land. Today we begin our service by honoring the land and the indigenous people who have protected and cared for it for generations. We light this candle in respect for all their efforts and in gratitude for our access to it. Blessed be. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist West Side Congregation in Rio Rancho. I am Michelle Poyani, the Service Associate for today. Our program is titled No More of This, and is based on Source 4, Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. And principle 4, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. To those ends, we will be exploring the story of Easter from the Christian tradition. Please be aware that this is not a Christian worship service. It is a Unitarian Universalist service exploring a particular sacred service story. Oh my goodness. Exploring a particular sacred story and applying the insights it generates to our lives today. We hope you find it meaningful and thought-provoking. Our service support team today includes Dana Sanford at our soundboard, Steve Poyani, our videographer, and Dee Curry and Judy Deutsch, who greeted you at the door. Thank you for making the details of our life work together. Here are this week's announcements. This past week, we delivered 215 pounds of food to Storehouse West. Our thanks to everyone who contributed and to Melinda and Eric for delivering it. The Wisdom Walkers next week hike is on Saturday, the 23rd at 9 a.m. here at the church. They will be hiking the Embudo Trail. For more details, please text Teresa 757-752-1678. Please make sure that goes on a list because you know how I am with the numbers. This group extends to a standing open invitation. You may join them at any time. Please let Teresa know if you are hiking. Our GoFundMe site for our little free library is up and running. You received a link with it in this week's newsletter. It is vitally important that those of us on the social media promote this link. If you deleted the email with the link, email Reverend Nancy and she will send it to you again. Following this service, we will hold our potluck and town hall meeting in the social hall. Everyone, members, friends, and visitors are welcome to join in this meal and to stay for our meeting. Town hall meeting is open discussion of ongoing events and issues. No binding vote happens, although many opinion polls occur. Is there anything else you would like to be brought to our attention?
Can you talk more into the mic? We're not getting enough volume out here.
Sure.
I've got it turned all
It's all the way up, okay.
All right. I shall bend over a little bit. Anyone else? All right. Please stand as you are willing and able for the lighting of our chalice. The spark flares in the dark of the tomb. The seed splits and the sprout rises. The egg cracks and the chick chirps. Light and life are revived, renewed, and restored. May we recognize new truths in the ancient stories, moving together toward the justice and love at the heart of our child's flame. Shalom. Please join me in our affirmation. Life is a gift. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. Shalom. Shalom. Please join me in the singing of hymn 123, Spirit of Life.
We good? Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Thank you. Please be seated. I invite you now to join me in a moment for centering. Sit back as comfortably as you can, wherever you are, here in a pew, at home in a chair. Be upright but supported against your back. Relax your muscles, uncrossing your ankles, your knees, your wrists. Let the energy flow freely through your body. Close your eyes if you are comfortable doing so, or choose a focal point and let your gaze go soft. Breathe fully and deeply, inhaling and exhaling. Settle into the rhythm of your breath, letting your conscious mind go blank. Picture a vast indigo space in your mind's eye. Breathe in the beauty of this space, inhaling life, exhaling fear, inhaling energy, exhaling tension. Let your mind's eye seek out the liminal edge, off in the distance, the point where you see a glimmer of a lighter blue. Focus your attention there. As the point extends to become a line, a horizon. Picture the colors of the dawn as they appear. A glimmer of bright orange, the gleam of blinding white, streaks of crimson and yellow, with lavender still marking the far edge. Breathe slowly and deeply as the crest of the sun breaks over the horizon, throwing such brilliance that the other colors pull back until the sun is center stage. The dark of indigo gone until another cycle has ended. Take a deep breath of the newly risen sun's energy. Breathe in life, renewed, revived, restored. And breathe out apathy, boredom, clutter. Breathe in and breathe out. Inhaling and exhaling freely. Rest in the satisfaction of this new day. And when you are ready, open your eyes. Shalom. Every week, we look forward to increasing the connections among us as we share our joys and concerns. We double our joys and halve our concerns as we name them aloud. If you have something to share, please raise your hand, and Michelle will bring you the mic. If you are participating via video, you may light your personal candle at any time.
Hi, I have a joy that we are welcoming new members today. That will be wonderful. And I have a concern and a joy combined that I saw on Facebook that Donna and her husband, Gary, I believe, were sick this past week. But I saw Donna's car in the parking lot. And so there she is. So I'm glad to see her here.
I have two joys. One is small, and that is that Friday I had my 4th radiation treatment, and the only side effects I've had is that I want to sleep all day. But the other big joy I have is that if things go as I hope, I'll be 93 tomorrow.
So it is a joy that people are concerned about me. Thank you. Yeah, Gary, and I am concerned it just seems like we're slacking off, as far as wearing masks and sanitizing and everything. I think Gary and I what we had was a nasty stomach bug, a 24-hour kind, but it put him in the hospital. And we've been doing all the right things. We keep our masks on and we try to wash our hands, and Gary's been trying not to eat the wrong foods. But there are things out there going around besides COVID. I think we caught it from the grocery store. There was no sanitizer anywhere out for people to use. Very few people, I think Gary and I were one of very, very few people wearing masks. So please continue to be careful. The stomach bug was horrible. And let's send some love and healing to Bram.
Yes, Bram is home sick today. However, we have the last minute report that she herself said she's doing better.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Well, I have the best joy. John and I are going to take all our kids and go down to the Bahamas for a week after the 2 years that we suffered through the other.
Oh, wonderful.
So make sure it doesn't rain all the time.
Yeah, because I have control over the weather. She's looking right at me.
Well, I want to share a joy about Feed Real Rancho Kids. Thanks to your help, we got another 197 packets done on Tuesday, and that means we now have enough to make it through the school year. So we're very happy happy about that, and it is truly a joy. Thanks.
We light this red candle as a sign that we want all racial violence to stop. We light it to mourn the death of the victims of racial violence. We light it to honor the struggle of the victims of racism and to respect the efforts of those devoted to obliterating racism in any manifestation. We light it to hold ourselves and each other account. Shalom.
We're going to loop around and light one more candle for Ann Harrison, who went home from rehab on Friday. Dick got taught how to help her get in and out of the car and all that kind of stuff, so we hope that she's doing well. And our final white candle for everything else that we still hold in our own hearts and minds. Now I'm going to get the mic.
Oh, let me get it.
It's right down there.
I got it. You take care of this.
Okay, so our moment for all ages. While the Easter Bunny is probably the best known commercial, trademark, whatever symbol of Easter, and pretty much has cornered the market on Easter sweets, right behind the Easter Bunny are marshmallow peeps. They are an American thing. So, I thought you might like to know a little bit more about them, because they are giving the Easter Bunny, in all of his various chocolate forms, a run for his money. So, did you know that in 1953, when the Just Born company started making marshmallow peeps, it took 27 hours to make one peep. Wow. Now it takes 6 minutes. Peeps used to have wings. The wings were clipped in 1955. I saw pictures of them. I was only 3 then. I do not remember Peeps having wings, but they did. Enough Peeps are made each year to circle the Earth twice. It would take 429 million Peeps bunnies, the pink ones that are up here, to circle the moon. It would take 80 million Peeps to reach from New York City to Los Angeles. Yellow is the best-selling color of Peeps, followed by pink and then blue. And white was brought back after a 10-year hiatus. Public demand brought it back. An employee at Just Born, the company who makes Peeps, invented chocolate jimmies, or sprinkles. And yes, his name was Jimmy. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, a baby is born every 8 seconds in our country. At Just Born, 504 Peeps are hatched every 8 seconds. Wow. Yeah. It would take 127 quadrillion Peeps to fill the Grand Canyon. So, when all is said and done, keep calm and peep on.
Every time we gather here to celebrate our life together and pledge ourselves to the new life as we present our gifts of love and commitment. Whether the gifts you offer are financial or based on your special talents, or the donation of your time, or the combination of all three, we thank you. Without your generosity, our life together would fade.
Dana, could you grab the baskets? Yeah. Or somebody in the back? And does anybody need the offering? Yes, we do. And Michelle is looking for the other one there.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Okay. Will you join me in our chorus? From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. Thank you. Now, I would like to invite our new members to come up and just stand across the front here. They are, I will read you their names just so you've heard them, and then I will let them introduce themselves so you hear it from them with a microphone. So we have Arwen Lynch, Chase Poe, Karen Schaefer, Delbert Schaefer, Jack Meyer, and Nika Quirk. And our token tater. Please don't let him burn his nose on the candle. So, and slide in between you. Thank you. So, I'm going to hand you the microphone, Nika, if you would just introduce yourself by name and pass it down, and I will catch it on the other end. Nika Quirk. Oh, is it on here? No, it's not helpful. Once again, Nika Quirk, like quirk of fate.
Jack Meyer.
Arwen Lynch Poe.
Chase Poe.
Karen Schaefer.
Delbert Schaefer.
Thank you. Today, as we celebrate spring and new life in so many ways, it is a joy to receive people into membership in our congregation. I'm going to ask 2 questions, and then we will invite them to sign their names into the membership book. And at the very end, as you move through this process, you will see a basket with ribbons and safety pins. Please choose one of each and hold on to it. What we'd like you to do is to weave it into our loom as literally becoming part of the thread of our tapestry of ourselves here. However, that takes a little time, and I'm sure none of you wants to stand here fumbling with that while we all watch. So you can do it later. But in the meantime, this question is for you. Does your presence here and now indicate a freely made request to join the Unitarian Universalist Westside congregation, to participate in the life of the congregation, and to contribute to it as you are able? If so, please respond yes.
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 This question is for those of you who are members of the congregation already. Do you, as members of UUWC, affirm these people as fellow members of the congregation, welcoming their presence, their participation, their influence, and their contributions as full members of this congregation? If so, please respond by saying, "We do."
We do.
Yay! And now we can have a round of applause, which I can't do. And I'm going to invite Jay and Michelle as board representation to shake your hands and welcome you. And actually, I will get out of your way. I'm going to head this way. And then Delbert, as soon as they've done that, if you would just sign in, please, every other line, your name and the date.
Good morning. So excited to meet you. Good morning. Okay. My date. Good morning. Thank you. Hey, Tyler. I need to get the pen.
Oh, thank you.
No.
Today is the 17th. Here is your official name tag. Yep. Thank you. Oh,
I'm all
I'm
right.
sorry. Right family, wrong one.
We look alike.
Sorry.
These are our brand new, you should all check them out. These are our brand new politically correct, open and affirming name tags. Be very impressed.
Yeah. Are we all going?
Yeah.
Oh my God. While we witness their signing, the rest of you may want to open your hymnals to number 628. Just stay seated for now. But thank you all so much and welcome to the congregation. Now if you would all stand as you are able, and we are going to do the responsive reading at number 628. If you're facing Michelle, you're going to be reading the boldface type with her, and if you're facing me, we're going to be reading the italics. You're on.
Rolling away the stone. In the tomb of the soul, we carry secret yearnings, pains, frustrations, loneliness, fears, regrets, and worries.
In the tomb of the soul, we take refuge from the world and its heaviness.
In the tomb of the soul, we wrap ourselves in the security of darkness.
Sometimes this is a comfort, sometimes it is an escape.
Sometimes it prepares us for experience. Sometimes it insulates us from life.
Sometimes this tomb life gives us time to feel the pain of the world and reach out to heal others. Sometimes it numbs us and locks us up with our own concerns.
In this season where light and dark balance the day, we seek balance for ourselves.
Grateful for the darkness that has nourished us, we push away the stone and invite the light to awaken us to the possibilities within us and among us. Possibilities for new life in ourselves and in our world. Thank you. Please be seated. I am fully aware that Easter is a difficult holiday for many UUs to observe in any way, shape, or form. Coming as it does from the Christian tradition, which is so strongly associated with empire in many of our minds, it might seem better to ignore it. Perhaps even delete it from the calendar of UU possibilities. That would be a grievous error. Here's why. The original Easter story is one of those sacred stories I mentioned last week that we ignore to our peril. Please make the distinction with me that I will be talking about the original story in the book, the Bible, and not the traditions about what that means that have developed in the intervening centuries. And please also remember that Christians do not agree, even among themselves, as to exactly what this story means and how to make meaningful sense of it in their lives. Which leaves the door wide open for us to read it for ourselves and make our own sense of it. Which does not mean that anything goes. that doorway is framed by history which needs to be acknowledged. Sometimes the developmental history of Christianity needs to be affirmed, and sometimes it needs to be denied. In either case, we need to pay attention to the story because its influence, for good or ill, has been massive in the past 2,000 plus years, and it's not finished yet. Keep in mind that we can be far more effective at correcting negative legacies if we know the story than if we try to ignore it. I hope that what I have to say here is empowering for you. So first, like Passover that we explored last week, this is a story with a host of characters and details that we can in no way do justice to in the next 20 minutes. But here are the highlights. And again, my apologies to the historians among you out there. It's a hop, skip, and a jump history. Jesus of Nazareth, a man of questionable parentage, was a rabbi who wandered the countryside of Israel. He preached and taught that God loved everyone, not just the rich and famous and successful. He insisted that God was available to every individual person in an intimate relationship that did not require priestly intervention. He encouraged people to call God Abba, a familiar form of address for one's father. Not the title of father, but more like the nickname of dad. In addition to his preaching and teaching, he cured the sick, fed the hungry, advocated for the powerless, and in general was a good Jew. He kept kosher, he celebrated Passover. He pushed the envelope on some traditional Jewish habits and treated women like full human beings in an era in which that was not the norm. To the best of anyone's knowledge, he never married and never had children, although alternative biographies and creative speculation, think the Da Vinci Code, that abounds. He had 12 men as his closest friends and disciples, and innumerable people followed him throughout the countryside, devoted to his well-being and his teaching. He was a force for change. His words were supported by his actions and empowered others to live their lives more fully. Now, change is not something that people in power often appreciate, particularly when the change does not work to grant them greater power and more wealth and prestige. Jesus was definitely a thorn in the side of the power structure of his day. The stories about him make it clear that he knew that the end of his life was approaching. Those in power had taken about all they could stand from him. So the story of his last days is a story of political intrigue, the survival of those closest to him, and ultimately the formation of a new community after his death. And I feel that it's necessary to say that I think the Jesus of the stories, the man, would be stunned and aghast at much of what has ultimately developed from his story. At the same time, I need to acknowledge that what happened to him and to those around him at the time of his death was so unique that making sense of it is mind-boggling. Because the fact is, even if we, in our modern insight and sophisticated thinking, are quite sure that the resurrection of Jesus is fiction, that it is an impossibility, that it never happened, something did. And whatever that something was, it changed the life of his followers and ultimately of life on our planet. So back to the story. Jesus had become enough of a problem for the Jewish authorities to be deeply concerned that Rome, currently the occupying force in Israel, would be moved to impose a harsh military law if they couldn't contain Jesus and eliminate his followers from organizing and acting on his teachings. Part of the story includes a recorded discussion between high-ranking Jewish officials that Rome had left in charge, but who knew their positions to be tenuous. In their conversation, they decide that it is better for one man to die than for Rome to come down with military might on the whole city of Jerusalem. They recognize the situation as being highly sensitive. They need to take Jesus out of the equation to deflate the tension in the city. So they hired Judas for the ever-famous 30 pieces of silver, one of Jesus' closest disciples, to take them to Jesus and confirm his identity, which Judas does. He and a cohort of men, armed with clubs and swords, show up in the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus and the other disciples are praying, following their last meal together. They arrest Jesus, who simply says, "Yes, it's me you're looking for," after Judas identifies him by kissing him. In the drama of the moment, Peter, another disciple of Jesus, swings his sword and cuts off the ear of the high priest's servant, to which Jesus says, "No more of this. Don't you know that those who live by the sword will also die by the sword?" And Jesus reaches out and touches the wound and heals it. There is no further battle of record. Now you're probably dimly familiar with the rest of the storyline. Jesus is taken to Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, for judgment. The Jews are asking for the death penalty on charges of religious heresy, but under Roman rule they cannot carry that out without the governor's approval. Pilate isn't sure what to do initially. His wife shares a dream she had in which Jesus was clearly innocent and implores Pontius Pilate to have nothing to do with Jesus' death. So Pilate sends Jesus to Herod, nominal king of Judea by appointment of the Roman Senate. Herod interrogates him and then sends him back to Pilate. It is noteworthy that the story tells us that the two men, Herod and Pilate, had been enemies prior to this. However, they are now best friends because they have joined together with Jesus as the common enemy between them. Ultimately, Pilate continues to try and dodge responsibility for sentencing Jesus, offering to imprison him and release another prisoner to the crowd instead. But the crowd, think of your experience with agitated crowds, always a volatile group, scream for his death. So after dramatically washing his hands and asking, "What is truth?" Pilate sends Jesus off to be crucified. Pilate also goes to some effort to post guards to make sure that no one springs Jesus either before he's dead or his body after he's crucified, because rumors of resurrection are already in the air, and Pilate is taking no chances. So Jesus is crucified. He dies in about 3 hours, and his body is given to a man named Nicodemus, who had a conveniently empty tomb he could be put in. Military guards were posted at the tomb, and everyone went home deflated. Some were deeply grieving the loss of their beloved teacher and spiritual leader. Others were relieved that the troublesome rabbi that people rallied around had been removed. That's on Friday. Saturday was the Sabbath. Nothing could be done. On the following Sunday, the women who had been following Jesus went to the tomb to take care of his body, only to discover that it was gone. In one story, and it's worth noting that the Bible gives us 4 different versions of this story, so it's multiple choice right from the start. In one story, there are angels in the tomb. In another story, the grave clothes are neatly folded and set on a shelf. In one story, it's just one woman, Mary Magdalene, who actually encounters the risen Jesus, doesn't recognize him, but she has a conversation with him. By evening, several of the disciples have also had a conversation with him as they walked home from Jerusalem. They are all stunned at the news that the body of Jesus is not in the tomb. It appears he made good on the promise of resurrection. Now, the question to ask is, what does this mean? We aren't going to try to prove or disprove it. We're going to look at it as a story with its own integrity. What does this story mean? It means many different things to many different people. And no one is in a position to proclaim a single truth and mandate it for everyone. Not that people haven't tried, but it has yet to take. Here's what it meant to the original people in the moment. It meant that they had to live their lives in keeping with all that Jesus had taught them. The resurrection vindicated his teachings. Clearly, God was on Jesus' side, or he would have stayed dead and their hopes would have died with him. What they did was to change how they lived. They held all their possessions in common. All their money went into a common pot. They spent their time feeding the hungry, taking care of widows and orphans, and teaching everyone that they were a beloved child of God, regardless of their personal circumstances. They continued Jesus' healing ministry. They tried to work out what life would look like if violence was off the table and love and kindness were the order of the day. Now this went on in a variety of forms for several hundred years, until in the year 312 of the Common Era, the Emperor Constantine had a dream of military victory under the sign of the Christian cross. He woke up and promptly mandated that everyone become Christian pretty much overnight. All of his troops, all of his citizens, all of his political officials. As Lord Acton memorably wrote in 1887, "Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." At that point in 312, empire became the order of the day, and the teachings of Jesus were manipulated and twisted to support the power of the state. The Easter miracle was over. We're going to stop with our story right there. Here's what I want us to be aware of in regard to the story of Easter. Like the story of Passover before it, the story of Easter is a story of victimization and scapegoating. Jesus was executed by the state as a sacrifice on behalf of the city of Jerusalem. He was a political pawn with an agenda of his own, but a pawn nonetheless. The most basic truth of the story is the line, "No more of this." When Peter attempted to defend Jesus by attacking the high priest's servant, Jesus stopped him and pointed out that violence doesn't bring peace. It brings more violence. No more of this certainly refers to weapons and assault and violence. It also refers to the very human pattern of creating victims and scapegoating them, blaming them for stuff for which they are not responsible, so that we can distract ourselves from what's really going on and settle down in a sort of faux peace until the next time people get riled up. We do this all the time. It is part of a very basic human dynamic. We see it on our children's playgrounds. We see it in the boardrooms and the judicial halls of our country. We are largely unaware of it because it works. It works really well. It worked great for Jerusalem. There was no revolt, and Rome did not annihilate the city. We see it at work when two kids both want the same toy, and they fight with each other to get it, until, or unless, someone intervenes and teaches them how to share, or a third child enters the room, at which point, more often than not, the first two who have been fighting intensely with each other over the same toy gang up on the third, and they become best friends at the expense of that third kid who actually did nothing wrong. We make victims all the time, and then we wonder why people are hurt and angry. Often in doing so, we also make peace between the original warring factions, but that only holds until the next competition repeats the whole dynamic. Bless you. If you start reading your newspaper or your online news, wherever you get it, through this lens, you will be amazed and appalled at what is right before your eyes that you never saw before. And for the record, the character of God in the story is on the side of justice, mercy, and compassion. The legacy of the Easter story is the expose of human violence and the dynamics of how it works. If you read the story in its original text, it is spelled out clearly on the page, right down to new alliances between Herod and Pontius Pilate, to the conversation about we're going to sacrifice this man for the good of the city. And it's clear the entire time that he's innocent, and many people know it, just not the ones in charge and with the power. If you know the scapegoat is innocent, the whole thing falls apart, because it's actually a pretty fragile structure. So ask yourself this: what would it be like if we all intentionally lived looking for victims and looking for scapegoats, and then refused to participate in creating or using them? Think about your family dynamics and the patterns that you're really used to. You think of it as just the way things are. But I'll bet there are customary victims in a lot of circumstances. You know who's at fault. You don't even need to play the whole drama out after a while. Most of us have patterns, and if we don't identify and explore them, they remain in place. But if we're willing to look, the truth in front of our eyes can be mind-boggling. It's actually painful to see the dynamics of scapegoating around us. But like every other human psychodynamic, we can learn to recognize it, to identify the process at work, and choose to be another way. Like the first Christians after Jesus' death, we can choose to make getting people fed, housed, clothed, and medically cared for our top priority. We can choose to make the welfare of those without resources and without advocates, the modern-day equivalent of the biblical widow and orphan. We can choose to equip and empower them to live full lives. The possibilities are endless if we choose them. The moral of this sacred story is no more of this. No more power over others that deprives them of full living. No more rewarding greed with power and status. No more use of weapons and violence to achieve our ends. And on an individual basis, no more gossiping or insinuation about people we don't like. No more hating on groups we disapprove of, even when the disapproval is for a good reason. Inherent worth and dignity for all. Can you imagine what the world would look like if every person felt affirmed, if we all felt worthy in our own skin, in our own lives? It would change almost everything. It's not as simple as someone saying, do this, and identifying a single right way to be a good human being. That can't be done. We're not all the same. There is a richness to humanity that demands a richness and complexity of right ways to be human. If we drop the Easter story from our consciousness, we will lose a heritage of great value, perhaps a major key as to how to be human. We will lose the knowledge about when to say, no more of this. And we need to learn to say that long and loud and clear. No more of this. Shalom, amen, slava, and blessed be. Now, technically, we have 2 minutes left. And I'm really happy that we're not already over time. Judy, thank you, Michelle.
I assume you were going to ask.
Yes, I was going to, and where is it?
I agreed with all your conclusions, but there was a question I had earlier in my mind when you explained how certain of the Jews were concerned that if Jesus were not attacked, then the Jewish community would be
We're at
attacked.
risk, right.
And for the first time, I saw a parallel in what we're doing today. It's not Jesus,
No.
but it's the Ukraine, the people in Ukraine who are going through such horrible things because we're afraid.
Yes, it is the same dynamic. Every war is.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're just afraid that we'll all be obliterated if we do what's needed.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer, but I do have that question.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other comments or questions or anything anyone wants to raise?
I think it's in the Bible, but what exactly caused the Jews in Jerusalem to be against Jesus?
He was preaching and teaching in a way that challenged the temple authority. And by saying that individual people were already beloved by God and did not need priestly intervention, the day before this happens is that dramatic scene that some of you may remember where Jesus throws over the moneylender's table in the temple because he says they're getting in the way between people and God. So Jesus challenged all kinds of authority. I don't think he really cared who was behind it. If it was wrong, it was wrong. So his followers, for them to adopt that attitude made for all kinds of unrest in the city where the temple was. Anything else? Okay. I want to thank you for paying such close attention, or at least giving a really good appearance of it. Because I understand that that's a possibility. If we could open our hymnals to number 270, we're going to sing one verse. Standing as we're able. And I have no idea who knows this from a bygone era, but please feel free to chime in with enthusiasm if you do. O day of light and gladness, of prophecy and song, what thoughts within us waken, what hallowed memories throng. The soul's horizon widens, past, present, future glad, and rises on our vision, the life that has no end. Thank you. If you would join me now in extinguishing our chalice. The words are in your bulletin. We extinguish our chalice flame, still holding its light and heat in our hearts. Inspired and impassioned, may we go from here to recreate the world in love. Slava. May you develop a whole new radar for identifying and responding to victims in matters great and small. May you include love and compassion and justice in every aspect of your life. Slava, and happy Easter. And if you would face each other across the aisle, we will sing Go Now in Peace, and then head out to the social hall where we have potluck lunch and town hall meeting. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere.